afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan Chekow-Lusignan, Director of Marketing and Program Development for the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library. Welcome to Book Sandwiched In. We ask that you please silence your cell phones at this time. Our thanks go to those who help fund programs like these through FFRPL, the dedicated FFRPL committee members who curate and organize these events, our guest speakers who so graciously share their time and talents with us, the library staff who help with our setup and production, and the thousands of people who attend each year. We are live streaming the formal portion of today's program to the library's YouTube channel at Rochester Public Library, New York. If you need to access the induction loop service in the auditorium, please adjust your hearing aid to the T switch. FFRPL raises funds, presents programs, supports special projects, helps to create specialized spaces, and purchases supplemental materials and equipment for the Rochester Public Library. We also manage restricted funds that provide supplemental materials support to 62 eligible libraries in Monroe, Ontario, Wayne, Livingston, Orleans, and Genesee counties. We raise funds through donations to an annual campaign, capital campaigns, grants, planned gifts, and revenue from book sales on-site and online. We present programs like today's Book Sandwiched In Review. We support special community projects like the In This Moment book launch and panel discussion on Monday, September 29th from 6:30 to 8:30 at the George Eastman Museum. In This Moment unveils, amplifies, and preserves the stories of contemporary Black leaders from across the Rochester area. And you can learn more and register for the free event at eastman.org. We also support projects like Central's signature Art of the Book and Paper exhibit on view through November 15th across the street in the Rundell building, and FFRPL is a founding sponsor of that exhibit. FFRPL helps to create specialized spaces such as RPL Go, RPL's new mobile library. FFRPL provided financial support to RIT students to create product prototypes for the vehicle and bought a set of laptops for the specialized space. And finally, FFRPL purchases supplemental materials and equipment for the library for resources like Central's VIP Pass Explorer kits, which now include added materials that patrons can use when visiting the Memorial Art Gallery, Rochester Museum and Science Center, Corning Museum of Glass, and Sonnenberg Gardens. Thanks to our donors who make our work possible. Today, Don Hyatt will review Warhol's Muses, the artists, misfits, and superstars destroyed by the factory fame machine by Lawrence Leamer. Leamer explores the lives of 10 complex, unconventional women Warhol dubbed his superstars, who inspired and starred in his legendary underground films. Set in Manhattan in the 1960s, the historical biography examines Warhol's obsession with celebrity and uncovers intimate details about the life and work of one of the most legendary artists of all time. Don Hyatt is a librarian assistant in the Central Arts Division and has a background in art and photography. He works with all ages teaching photography, and he does freelance photography as well. His work can be seen at donaldjhyatt.com. Please join me in welcoming Don to our podium.
Hello, everyone. I am very honored to be a part of this as a library employee and as an artist that Susan found me looking for someone to review the book, and I had a fun time doing this, and I hope we'll have a little journey together through this book and have some fun in it. There's a quote to start when I was reading this book the first time that got to this idea that I am left with this book. Quote, "Warhol is in a lot of ways inscrutable. And sometimes you just have to tell yourself, maybe we won't be able to uncover all the mystery. Maybe the mystery will go on forever." For such a man that used popular culture, his own persona, in a time that's very similar yet different to our time now, which I will touch on in this, that really left me thinking about this idea that we can have such a character and all these decades later we are still having a book like this have everything come together, which is pretty incredible in itself when you realize that beginning with the Silver Factory, it's sort of the umbrella of this book. This is from a book. The book is actually in our library system. It's in the back corner if you'd like to check it out for anybody's here today. We can see all the spider web of lives that interacted with Warhol. This book is just a portion of that in the women and the superstars of that. But in putting this together, this was drawn in one of the books that gave more light to all these interconnections, also with the years that I realized this morning as I was doing my last little review. And just the fact that this man that grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was able to have such a lasting impact on our lives. And with that, to begin with the book itself, the strength with this book is the fact that a man that we still do not know all the details and the mystique, the mystery of it, such as in that quote, that he walked around for decades with a early era microphone. Much of the author talks about this in it and the research that went involved in the end. I think that through this wonderful device, a man in the 60s, 1964, was able to record everything that was around him, and through that he gave himself more of the mystique. A quote, hopefully we will find here, sorry. This is Warhol himself. The acquisition of my tape recorder really finished whatever emotional life I have had. But I was glad to see it go. Nothing was ever a problem again because it meant just a good tape. And when a problem transfers itself onto a good tape, it's not a problem anymore. The beauty of this stories in this book is that mixture of the darkness and lightness of these stories. There is a sense of shock and awe in some of the stories. There's a humbling aspect of many of the backgrounds, the new rich, the old rich, and how that came together through the experience with Warhol, but the magic that we did have, so much resource to put this together years later, and it still reads as new. I obviously have known Warhol from my studies in college and such, and the artworks that he created and the impact, but just to read something that still felt new. I knew Warhol the man. These were stories about him and around him, but gave new light to that. And then with that, you can see throughout many a times, he's using this early technology of the time to record everything. And through that, I have a slight thought that I wish the author was able to quote more directly from these tapes. He was lucky enough to get the transcripts. It's in the end of the book, and he talks about it, but that would be I would love to hear Warhol in his own words in these recordings, just to see direct quotes. He talked about the ways in which he had to make do with copyright issues, because as is in Warhol's work, there's a lot of copyright issues that is not the conversation for today. But having to use this resource but give it a different light in storytelling, and I think it would have been a little more powerful if the author would have been able to use some more direct quotes. Many times in the stories of these women, there are these incredible quotes from other tabloids, newspapers, things of the time that are quoted directly that give a very vivid experience of this era to those that are written about here. And with that, where is it? He's working from reality itself to make artworks. And a further artwork that I find very impressionable that's very relevant to this work is I have yet to have been to the Warhol Museum, but he did make these wonderful time capsules of his work, of his desk, where he would shovel in everything on his desk, no matter how important it was, and it ended up in these wonderful boxes, just like these tapes of information that this book came from, in a way. And through that is a powerful that these time capsules were opened. I think the last one was opened sometime when I was in college in like 2012 or 2013. Decades later, we're still pulling from these resources. And through that, we find the strength of his work, the strength of this book, and the ideas that are involved in this book coming together being about Andy Warhol and these muses, but to me, the entire time reading this book, I was left thinking about celebrity more so and the applicability of our modern lives today, although we are seeing it in a different light. We don't have a Warhol figure, we don't have our 15 minutes, we have 15 seconds of a random individual being recorded, and the strength of that coming together to change a life, although much of the celebrity and fame is similar, the foreshortenedness is something I wonder what Warhol would have thought in that. And with that, to turn to, was thinking about the art and such to shed light to think in how Warhol was thinking about these. Early works where he was juxtaposing his early pop art to the storefronts in '61, and just to envision how much it must have been shocking. I am a young person in my mid-30s to see such a juxtaposition of something pulled from culture to become art to then change the world. A wonderful quote of this end of that is, quote, "I'm really in love with TV commercials. I think they're among the best things on TV. They should run much longer than they do." And there's a sort of humorous aspect to it, and it comes together in these interesting ways where he was always on the cutting edge of technology, and much of this book is about the filmmaking, the films that he made, which I have not seen any myself, to be honest. They are sort of in a vault of a different place due to many subjects that are mentioned in this. It is a good read for that if you like salacious details and a fun, shocking aspect of the book. This book does hold held interest for me in some of the shocking, sometimes a little tabloidy, but it's still an enjoyable read from that. So we find Warhol here, and this is a '64 photo, and you can see all these things that feel very relevant if you know the cans. JFK was assassinated, but then you were seeing him interacting with a older style projector, probably 8 or 16 millimeter, and the difference of technology and such, that he was always on the cutting edge. These films he made in the book mentioned were always using the most advanced thing. He was always pushing that. He had left art, this pop art world, very soon and transitioned into the moving visual image. That is much of it. So we can see some influences on the right, and then the quote: "The more you look at the same exact thing, the meaning goes away, and the better and emptier you feel." So early silkscreen, much cool little details talking about in the book of how he made his work with people collaborating. Can go a whole nother way, but we have to keep it short for today. And how that came together of all these people seeing him work. The things that could be bought by everybody, that we all touch, that could be no different than everybody. American culture being a democratic culture of the time, as we are still a democracy today. But that idea that no matter how rich you were, you still got the same Coke as somebody else. The pop art coming together in terms of this, it is a pursuit of fame in this book. It's showing how he pursued fame, in essence, some shrewd business decisions, working with people, not paying people well. And then this is one of his early sort of art box of putting a silk screening box to have something come together to become an object of art from our daily life. Obviously, there's not Brillo pads in it, but these are some of the most influential art objects of this era. Amongst other things, there are the cans in the bottom here in the display. But he thought he was going to sell all these boxes for $200 to $400 a piece, as mentioned in the book. It's a fun little story of a little sub-piece of the art. There's all these beautiful art moments speckled in this book, talking about the art world and how things came together, how it worked. And then with that, we get to fame as sort of this visual. We have Marilyn Monroe, Elvis, that again he's using that societal fame item to make his image. It is powerful. I don't think these are, in my mind, the most valuable pieces of art in the world, but it does speak to this idea of American culture, pop culture, and with that, we find ourselves thinking, let me find this quote, sorry. And with that, so there's this is like a little humor. So we have Marilyn Monroe and Elvis, and then this is a famous work, if anybody's ever seen this, that I really enjoyed in college, and I enjoy it even more now after reading this book on the ideas of fame. So this is in the World's Fair in 1964. So Warhol was making images from reality, from culture at large. He's appropriating imagery. This is from 13 Most Wanted Men, from I think a New York City publication from the police, of people that they wanted to apprehend in for various crimes. So he painted those images and put them on the World's Fair in 1964. And it didn't go over well. These are famous people in a different way, still pulling from that idea. And then after, it was, rather than taking it down because they did not want to deal with it being up, they just painted it over in silver aluminum. And that visual image to me of just painting over the truth of ourselves is just quite a powerful image. It still sits with me. Just obviously I was not alive then, but learning about this in art history, coming back to this work really brought out the popularity of and strength of this work, as it is part of our interaction with these artworks as well, and how we change. There are also different time as these superstars were, but they are also this interaction we're still having with. And with that, I found this Atomic Bomb 1965 that, again, popular imagery, silk-screened to say something else after many. And after many years from that, I mean, we have relatively no nuclear testing, but the idea that this is still hanging over us really kind of sat with me as I was coming together on this, and it just showing that visual. And with that, we start to get into, just to touch on the women of this book and the transition into video. So he's using movies to make films. So there's this wonderful set of screen tests that he did, and he would record faces, and there's a page, I think, of over 400 of these videos of various people. He would just record their face like you're making a movie. The makeup is done, but they record them. So we have these beautiful visual records now that have become something else over the decades, but it was just kind of this informal thing that he came together to make. But it's the beginning of using the visual image of celebrity, and how he chose and did these women, used these women's as a vehicle for his creative endeavors in a visual medium. There is a juxtaposition throughout the book of that reality to the silver factory, which is displayed on the right. He is sitting on the couch. But there is an interesting juxtaposition that gives this book a lot of depth and interest for the background world of all this is coming into. We are dealing with, was a surprise to learn about in this book, of a very different drug culture of uppers and intensity of this era that doesn't exist really today, and then this social art world of this work to this presented celebrity visual that he presented out and came together. Quote. This is another quote. This is from Truman Capote in the book. With me, fame happened as a result of intense preoccupation with an art form. He, Warhol, was just moving around in various things, looking for a way to become famous. Fame is everything he is about. There's an incredible cast of characters that are quoted, he interacted with in the depth of this book. And with that, we find the ups and downs of these women in various ways. Some were interviewed in this book. Many have already passed. Some passed in a tragic way in the younger years. And we just realized the thought I was left with this book is thinking about how fame is part of culture and how it is still such this driving factor. Andy Warhol was this sort of figure that moved culture. He was a curator of fame in a sense, and now we have sort of left ourselves to an algorithm or internet culture, and there's not a figure that is exactly pointing us out to the new celebrities. We have gone from the 15 minutes of fame, as Warhol talked about in his films. 15 minutes of fame would be his way of describing your ups and downs. And then this is a quote from baby Jane Holzer in the book. "I was a famous model of the 60s, and all the gossip columnists wrote me up, so I became a celebrity. But I was a creation and an image. That's an illusion, and now I'm myself." There's this whole transient idea of fame and how that affects people, and the whole entire time I'm reading this book, I was thinking about how it's such a pervasive idea in our culture that we are still experiencing today. And just a few photos of the various characters, and you can see how persona, as after a while Warhol had his very similar persona, and how that came together to make him the image that we know. And through that, we find that this is a photograph by Richard Avedon. On the left, again, this is in '86, I believe. You still see him with the recorder. There's a wonderful, I think it's four sort of panoramic frames of the image on the left. That is a bit graphic, so it's not shown here, but this image is next to it in the book that we have. But it's cool to see that he's still walking around with the recorder. And then this is the drastic visual of how his life changed through being shot by one of the Muses, as referenced in the book. A life-changing event in his own personal work. Popism, he talked about how he was so inspired by the world and being around these people of varying minds and a sort of chaos effect. And then after this event, tragically and dramatically, we can tell of this and the fact that he even survived. He talked about being a recluse, and the factory became a different place where he kind of sat in the back. He wasn't at the grace of all these people. He kind of changed as a person. And it's just sort of, with that, how fame changed him and how he interacted with the world at large. And sort of to come back, as we have talked about the art and the fame, this is an early work on the left, using popular imagery of something like a newspaper to make a print on a canvas. You're alienating an idea. There's a newspaper, it's on a wall, it becomes different, we look at it differently. And just the same, we find that unintentionally he was actually shot on June 3rd, 1968. Both of these, the fake newspaper is June 4th, and then the real newspaper is June 4th, which just is like a passing little detail. The art became life, he became him, and so on and so forth with that. And again, over time, his artwork did change to see how he did go to a darker place in terms of his own mortality and the drastic change in that entailed. It is a very powerful story in this book. As an artist, it did give me inspirations to look at the world. I'm an observing person in my photographic works, so I see part of the inspiration that I did not realize after reading this book, because it's talking about his creative and looking at the world at large. But it's also all a piece of us, and it's just we don't have this centralized figure to be the pushing of culture in the same way. There's sort of hands in the background of, we could say, like actors and actresses of studios, things like that, but there's not a pervasive single driver of culture as it was in the 60s. And through that, I think this makes a wonderful read if you are interested in the personal stories and how fame affects people. And I think it's still, again, of today, but also how do we kind of escape this trap of fame as a culture and the only way forward, especially in interacting with young people. As an arts educator, a lot of them want to be a famous person, which I don't think is a bad thing, but just the pervasive idea that that's such a way forward. And just to end, I had an idea. This came to me as I was reading this and the idea of fame, and this is just a little thought I wrote. Fame, the fickle, temporary, fleeting moment of significance. When will my face return to the shadow of insignificance? And I think it's a very fitting way to describe many stories in many ways and means of fame. And that is my presentation. Thank you all, and I would love any questions you have. And I tried to do, I don't know the exact time, I was trying for about 15 minutes. I think I'm a little bit over for the 15 minutes of fame. And I guess I did not know this till I walked in today. If you've registered, you get a ticket here.